Hey everybody, welcome back to Dawn.
And the queue, where if you don't know what to do in your game at any point, just start flailing.
I've been doing that one right.
Yeah, so another week, another episode. As you can see, we're missing our Don today, Mr. Octo.
Yeah, I'm
He
gonna
is
be the honorary Dawn for the day.
yeah, you are Proto Don. Octo is down with the sickness in a bad way, so we're going without him. But I think that'll be fine. Um, How's how's it been going, Neil? How's your games been lately?
Um, they've been in an interesting state where I feel like I'm in this very middle ground where I'm not doing any that much new stuff. I'm not like experimenting with a lot of new stuff. Um, I'm sticking to my fundamentals, so I'm actually not doing too bad, but I just don't feel like I'm progressing a lot right this second because I'm not applying a lot of new ideas.
Hmm.
But that also means that I it means I don't do a lot of the like overplays and weird stuff that I do when I'm like really trying to find new ways to improve.
Yeah. Well,
How about you?
it's always good to get back to basics. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm like my rank doesn't reflect it, but I feel like I'm playing a little bit better. I'm definitely understanding more stuff about the game. It's like I've
Hmm.
learned how to read new words as a kid, and I'm like, oh my god, I know how to pronounce this word. I know what this word is. And then someone's like, so what does it mean in this context? And we're like, I mean, I can pronounce it. Let's keep it at that, okay?
That
Um,
actually that reminds me of a story I'll tell you after.
okay. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. I just feel like I'm seeing new things on the board, where I'm like, oh, there's an issue here, and then I'm just kind of like, okay, now that I know there's an issue, how do I attack it or like fix it?
Mm, yeah, right. Like
um,
knowing is half the battle, as they say.
yeah. Um, so that's fun. Um, but yeah, still fighting through the 6Q rank. So we'll
Yeah,
see what happens.
it's definitely like a that's like that's a tough hurdle for sure.
Hmm.
I feel like I get well because six. You're talking 6Q OGS, which is maybe like 4Q KGS, and I remember I got stuck at 4Q for
Hmm.
on KGS for a really long time.
Yeah.
That was one of the big hurdles I had to overcome.
I mean, Neil, let's not compare me to you, okay?
That was, I can't tell if it would be a compliment or maybe a really big insult.
We'll leave it open ended like thickness is. Is it?
Okay, all
What
right.
is it?
Here's the story about I meant just like after what you said, I was going to tell you the story. So
Okay.
my when I was a kid, uh somewhere I had like heard the word idiot, and I at the time I was like I didn't know what it meant, and so I thought it was like this really big word that was like really cool. And so at one point I was at like elementary school or kindergarten or whatever, and some kid was like, "My dad is a lawyer." And I was like, "My dad is an idiot." But I said it with like such pride. So yeah, first you got to learn the word, and then you got to learn what the word means.
did, did the other kids just look at you like, what did
They're like, "Oh," because they don't know what it means either.
Oh my god, that's so fun. Does your dad know that story?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say because
He's forgiven me. He's
now it's on
forgiven
the
me.
internet.
Hmm. Yeah, no, he knows that one.
um, so a couple things before we get into today's topic. Wanted to give a quick shout out to the Starpoint podcast, and I really want to give. I know Octo's not here, but I want to give credit to him because he wanted to give that shout out, given that they shouted out this podcast, or at least mentioned it, I should say, in one of their recent episodes. So, you
Yes,
know,
big thanks for that.
always
That's awesome.
always glad to cross pollinate. And speaking of cross pollination, I want to also give a shout out to Simple Baduk, which is the YouTube channel, but is also now a website. If you guys don't know, do you know who Simple Baduk is, Neil?
I think so. I like he has a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, yeah. So he has a YouTube channel. He's gone over some like pro games, and more recently has been going over like a ton of like Joseki things,
Right, like
like
trick plays and stuff, right?
some trick plays, and like how do you handle like the small Chinese, the mini
Hmm.
Chinese, the Kobayashi, like
Yeah, I know
those
that.
types of
I
videos.
totally know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so like he had posted on Reddit today, May 19th, and he it was a very long post where he was basically talking about some like common things that players fall in, like some bad habits essentially that they do. And he was just kind of talking about that, but then at the end of it, he talked about how he now has started like a website where people can subscribe and get access to a lot of his different courses and videos that he's made in private. And I really enjoyed his content, and so I wanted to bring that up. And in addition to that, there's actually, if you go back to the post, I think it's free month, all in all caps, but you can get a
Oh
free
yeah. No, that's
month
right.
of his content on that site. So by all means, if you're a DDK, SDK player, check it out. I mean, free content is great, and if you end up really liking it, maybe you'll subscribe. So this is not an ad, by the way. This is
Yeah.
I like the
Just for
guy, and I
supporting
want
the
to
other creators.
exactly. I actually made an account today and was checking out some of his videos, and it's it's not bad. It is good content. There's there's certain things that I have differing opinions on, mainly regarding like trick plays, but I don't think it's like right or wrong. I think it's just kind of like a preference type of thing.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely disagreed with some pretty strong players on things that are not like objective, you know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I've like, for example, had a stronger player say, "Oh, well, sometimes you should just play this because maybe they won't like see this." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I just don't like doing that." But, I mean, I can see how it's not necessarily wrong. It just doesn't vibe for me.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, shout out to him. Definitely recommend checking him out. Anyways, on to today's topic, which Neil, I'll have you present because you wanted to talk about it.
Okay, I wanted to talk about getting out of a rut. And we have like our first, bullet point here is what is a rut. So I will give my definition. I'm curious to see if you agree with this, but I don't think of a rut as being the same as a plateau because a plateau could be, you can be studying, making good progress, and then you get to a level where it just requires like a higher level of understanding, and it just takes a while to get all of that knowledge, really in your brain. But I think of a rut as you've been, playing at a certain level and then suddenly you're playing at a lower level and you can't seem to figure out why and it feels like everything you do is wrong. It's
Mm-hmm.
that feeling of like I feel like I'm playing normally, but I keep losing. And you can't see what's going wrong, but other players see it and they're like, "Oh, well, yeah, I mean, you're making a lot of mistakes." So it's that psychological state of playing worse than you feel you should, like on average.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. And I'm curious what you would think about this because I view it as something different, but maybe you won't. But there are times where like I could be learning like a new topic or really studying something new, i.e., like attacking in the mid game, right?
Hmm.
And I'm trying to absorb all this knowledge. I go into my games and my games just are miserable. Like I'm just losing them left and right by like large margins because it's just so bad. And what's really happening is I'm trying out new ideas. I'm it's part of the learning process, unfortunately, where it's like I think I know how to attack, and then I'm doing it all wrong, so then you're losing. But I view that different than a rut, where like a rut's just kind of like all of a sudden you're just like out of nowhere you're just starting to like lose left and right or play worse, and you just don't really understand why. What do you think about that? Do you?
Yeah, I think of that as being a different thing. It's one thing to be trying something new. I mean, when you try something new, I think most of the time you should expect that it's going to hurt your game a little bit. And I do think that there's cases where trying something new and experimenting can lead you into a rut, but it's not, I wouldn't call it a rut in and of itself. I've had plenty of times where I do that intentionally. I'm trying something new. And then maybe I have a serious game and I go back to my normal style and I feel like I play pretty much like how I normally would. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just a matter of when you're incorporating something new, you kind of expect that you're gonna not be good at that at first and you're gonna have to like work your way up to it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm glad we're on that same page. So now diving more into like these ruts, um, what do you do to handle that, Neil?
Well, what I used to do, I'm gonna start with what I used to do. What I used to do is I would get really mad and then I would go on like a 20 game losing streak and drop like 2 or 3 ranks. I don't recommend that. I've since changed my approach. That wasn't working very well. Um, but I mean, that's one of the ways to know that you're in a rut is you're like when you have your losing streak and a common like a classic losing streak thing is that you lose some games and then you get really frustrated and then it's like, you know what, I'm gonna keep playing until I win a game. And then you just keep playing worse and worse and worse and what next thing you know you've lost like 15 games and now you're completely incapable of like winning because you're so tilted that you like can't get out of it. Um, but what I've since learned to do is I personally try to like change something really drastic about how I'm playing, because oftentimes when I'm in a rut, it's like my perception is all wrong. My perception about whether the moves I'm playing are good or whether I'm reading. Sometimes I'm like, I swear I'm reading. I'm reading plenty of moves ahead, and then when I get out of the rut, I look back and I'm like, oh, I was like not reading at all. I was like barely reading.
Yeah.
Um, so the first thing I try to do is like get out of that state because and I could all I really want to do when I'm doing that is like I just want to play way differently, where it's such a different way of playing that it like it gets me out of that groove. Kind of like if you're listening to a record and it's like in this groove, you got to like bump the record so it kind of gets out of that groove and then you can kind of look back and be like, oh, okay, I was doing all these things wrong and had a weird perception of the whole thing. So one way to do that I think works really well is to essentially just give yourself some goal in the game that's totally disconnected from winning and that's way different from your normal style. So you could be like, okay, I'm going to play, Great Wall opening, or I'm going to play a game where all I try to do is like, think about shape and play shape points or something. And the important thing is that if you do that, you have to do it without caring about winning. You have to like go into it being prepared to lose. But if you can get yourself just way outside of your normal way of thinking, something about that kind of like resets your brain and gets you out of this like this trance. It's almost like a trance when you're in a rut.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you just need to get out of that weird unconscious state of like playing without thinking.
Yeah, I would say like if you're in a rut, part of that is like you're caring about winning too much,
Hmm.
right? Because like if
Totally.
you're if you don't care about winning, I, I think it's like non-existent to be in a rut because at that
Yeah.
point
Right.
you're just thinking about, oh, I'm trying this new skill. Okay, this is how I failed. Okay, now this is how I need to correct that. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, I think I'm still messing up on that. Let's look at it more. Oh, okay, this is how I messed up. Here's how I can adjust. Like at that point, it's not about a rut. You're just going through like this learning process
Yeah. Right.
where so like the underlying thing is like if you're in a rut you're caring too much about winning, which I will say
Hmm.
over and over again, and when I say it, like I am guilty of this sometimes too. We all are, but it's like you can't care about winning.
Hmm.
You can't. You have to just care about it's something. Either trying to play the best game of Go that you can, focusing on either your Fuseki, your mid game, your end game, whatever it may be. If you just have like a goal in mind of like this is what I want to focus on, you're gonna win no matter what in your own mind.
Hmm.
Like that's a
Right.
win,
Yeah.
like for you long term as like a Go player. Um,
Hmm.
so I think it's really important to identify like if you feel like you're in a rut, part of it is like you were caring too much about winning, but then also like there is something else that's wrong. So what is it?
Right. Yeah. So actually, like that leads me to another attribute of being in a rut, which I think a common cause of being in a rut is underestimating your opponents and feeling like you deserve to win. So that's a really bad place to be because what happens is, like that, and that's why I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of times when people get into a rut, it's actually right after they went on a winning streak. Like sometimes people will go on a winning streak and they'll be playing the best they've ever played, and then that's when they get into a rut and they like backslide. And my theory on that is that if you're playing really well, you're probably grasping some new ideas, you're playing better than you were, you're reading well, and then you start to get this ego that's like, well, yeah, I mean, look at this move. This is ridiculous. This is such a garbage move. And then suddenly you're sort of like not giving it the respect it deserves. So maybe you don't read quite as like deeply as you would normally. And you might not even
Mm-hmm.
realize it. It might be like a subconscious way that you're just kind of phoning it in. And then and then you when it doesn't like when what you do doesn't work and that person beats you, then you get like more upset than usual because you're perceiving them as someone weaker than you who did something that wasn't particularly a good move, or their strategy was off in some way, and yet they beat you. So now you're like, well, how could they beat me? That's so frustrating. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the like first domino, and then it's like the next game you feel the same way, but you lose, and then it just gets
Mm-hmm.
worse and worse.
I would say a flip side to that too, or another side of that is, um, and we're gonna use me as an example in this because, yeah, this happens to me. But it's like you can identify like, oh, that's not a good move, and it's either like what you said, where it's like, oh, you're just not respecting them as much, and maybe you're not giving as much thought. But the other side of it is like, oh, maybe it's not a good move, but like, and you can identify it's not, but how you actually take advantage of that you don't know how, or
Hmm.
it's you don't execute, so then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, now that move doesn't look so bad. um, and I think
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
think I am more guilty of the latter, and mainly I think that's because of my exposure to the game. I mean, if we're still less than a year, I only have, I think, only like 200-ish games, maybe 300, I don't know. But anyways, like
Very impressive.
theoretically, I'm very studied, and because that's the only way for me to get better is through studying. Or I shouldn't say it's the only way, but for me to get better quickly, it's through studying because I just don't have enough time to play as many games. So I can identify like, oh, this move is like not as good, or it's like a bit icky to me, or however I want to describe it. But then, like, how do I take advantage of it? Maybe I'm not as sure on that. Um,
Hmm.
and I mean, a really good example of this, and I will preface it by saying he is a good player. I do respect him as a player, and I enjoy playing him a lot more after I have changed my mindset. But my god, is it infuriating for me to play against Druid sometimes. because because Druid's around the same rank as me. I think Octo argues he should be like 4Q on OGS, but he somehow fluctuates between 4 and 7Q, which is just insane how he does that. But like, Druid is the person where like he can play some pretty suboptimal moves like early on, but his mid game fighting is pretty strong. Like surprisingly so. And even like when talking about the games with him, like I disagree fundamentally with some of the stuff that he says. Like I don't think he will fully understand what is happening in the position. But then like we play a game and it's like I'm losing. Like it's kind of like I feel like I'm more studied and know more, so why am I not winning? But like he just has so much experience that like I can't
Right.
discredit that. And so, after I kind of went through this mindset this like change in mindset where I'm like, I need to respect him more. Like, even though he can't like verbalize certain things about certain positions, that doesn't mean he doesn't know how to play because he does. And so like that's kind of happening in a recent game of ours where like I'm not happy with some of the moves he's making, but like it's not like it's hurting me. I'm like, why are you making these moves? Like you're only hurting yourself. And now I'm just kind of like, all right, just let him make these moves. You know, even though I deem them as bad, I need to prove that they're bad by like taking advantage of them. And
Yeah.
I think I'm doing a better job of it, but yeah, um, one of
I
those
mean,
things.
it's
Go ahead, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say it's tough too because like you might be wrong about whether it's a bad move. That's
Mm-hmm.
also a thing that happens. And so
Yes.
I think like really, one way to get around that is to just think about it in terms of, okay, you're playing yourself basically. Like you're always just thinking, okay, how do I respond best to this move? How do I play a move that just makes the most sense to me? Um, because yeah, I mean I mean when I play against Druid, I definitely take it seriously because he will set himself up for really good fighting conditions, and so I have to be very careful about like how I use my resources and how I set up the board. Um, and what was I gonna say? Oh no, I lost my train of thought. Um, I totally lost it.
You'll
It
get
has
back
something
to
to do
it.
with like oh I remember. Okay. Um, my friend Jason, aka Xylix, who is sometimes in our Go Discord, he's around like 2 Dan or maybe like 3 Dan, something around there.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this term that I really like. He calls it like a weasel, and that's a player who plays a bunch of like invasions and like unreasonable moves, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna try to live everywhere, and if you let me live everywhere, you're gonna lose, basically. And I think those are really great players to play against to develop this sense of not underestimating your opponent, because you can be playing against a like what he calls a weasel, and maybe they should die everywhere, but if they don't, then it's really your own fault, and like you can't really call their moves bad until you have a way of
Yeah.
refuting them. And some of the most educational games I've played have been against these weasel type players. Like there's a couple on KGS that I've played against where I'm sweating the entire time, and I eventually, like with certain people, I played maybe like 4 or 5 games, and like as I got better the last few games, I felt like I was like, okay, now I feel like I can consistently win against this person. But it's not easy because they're really challenging you to put your money where your mouth is and like show that you know how to deal with like you have to show why this thing is unreasonable, and if you can't show it, then like that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% agree. Um, so yeah, kind of. I know we kind of got sidetracked a bit. Still kind of on topic, but anyways, um, yeah. So kind of like going back to like how like you got out of a rut. For me, it's. I mean, I haven't really had too many ruts, I would say. But what has helped me in, I think, probably my two biggest ruts, um, one being at when I was like 10Q, 9Q ish range. And then another
Hmm.
was actually 2 weeks ago. Um, was I have to like I have to just stop playing for like 3 or 4 days, and not just stop playing, but like I can't watch Go videos. I can't like nothing Go related. I have to just drop it. I like my mind. Something is happening in my mind where there's like too much commotion, and I just need it to like settle.
Mm.
And so by like letting my mind settle and then getting back into it, I feel refreshed, and I feel like the whatever I was learning has kind of like fully been like absorbed almost.
Hmm.
And it's not like I come back and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like a 2Q now, but but it's like I don't feel like I'm playing as bad, and I feel more relaxed. And that's like what happened 2 weeks ago. I took a 3 or 4 day break, and I come back and I'm like, okay, yeah, I think I'm playing a little bit better. I think I understand a bit more what's going on. Um, sorry, I would say before that, it's also good to try and figure out like what is going wrong in your games, and it's not always easy to like do it by yourself. I would recommend going to
Yeah.
like a stronger player or a teacher and just like show them a few games and be like, hey, what's like the common theme as to what's going on? Like, you may think you know, but seriously, just ask them, because you would probably be surprised as to what they're gonna say. um and it once you figure that out, like sometimes you can correct right there and be like, oh, okay, now I fix it and now my games are better. But sometimes it's like, dang it, I know what they said, but like I still can't like, I still keep like doing the opposite of what they said. So I think at that point, that's when like taking that 3 to 4 day break, at least for me, like really helps.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that you haven't gotten into that many ruts because you're a pretty like mm, you're a fairly humble player, which is a good thing. I mean, once you get into that place of thinking that you should be further along than you are and getting really, egoed out about how good you are, then that's when it's like can be really difficult, I think, um, to like get out of a rut, and to just play where you're really engaged and trying to think through everything. Because like one of the problems I've had when I've gotten stronger players to look at my games when I'm in a rut is that they'll be like, "Oh, well, this move, this doesn't make sense for these reasons," and I'm like, "I know, like I don't know why I played that." And so I'm sitting there kind of like, I feel like everything they're telling me I already know, and that the problem is that when I was in the game, I was just like playing stupid things that made no sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's some truth to that, but I think the quicker that you can get from that mentality of, nothing I do works and why did I play this stupid move into, okay, let me like identify what the problem is. Now I know that there's something to work on. And then to try to get into a new game where you don't care about winning, like you said, and you're just focused on trying to like improve your process of playing. I
Mm-hmm.
think that and there's different ways of doing that too. I've found that like in addition to the thing I mentioned of playing really differently, if I can get myself to play some really long, serious games, and I uh, either I have a goal where my only goal in the game is to feel like I didn't autopilot, I didn't, play impulsively. That's worked well for me. And another thing that weirdly has worked well, and I have no idea why this is, but I have videotaped myself playing where I talk out loud. And something about that, it's like when I'm not videotaping myself, it's like I'll just slip back into whatever thing I normally do, but just knowing that there's something recording me,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like having somebody in the room, and it causes me to think twice about like why I'm playing something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I would.
and yeah, it's like once I get one of those serious games where I play slowly, then I like that helps a lot. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you're not wrong about like the like speaking out loud, because what's happening
Hmm.
is you're explaining your thought process, even if it's like to someone or to no one, right? Just by explaining out loud your thought process and hearing yourself speak, you can be like, yeah, so like here I'm going to make this empty triangle because I'm going to do this, and the empty triangle is usually bad, and why am I making the empty triangle? like
Right, right.
like all of a sudden you just be like, what am I saying? um and funny enough, like, you even, if you go back to like uh I would say the second or third episode, it was one of the two, but like Octo is like quizzing me on like what move to make here, and I'm speaking out loud, and I literally say, I would play this, but this seems really over concentrated. And then instead of being like, yeah, so I shouldn't play that, I'm like, I'm gonna play that. Like, and like looking back on it, I'm just like, what? You literally just said like this is over concentrated, it's bad, and
Mhm.
then you're like, yes, I will double down. um,
Yeah.
and like that phenomenon is it's something that like I kind of learned about when I had studied poker for a bit. And it's like this, it's like a self-control thing. Like it's really common in like poker where it's like, okay, you know, this theory, like even though you have like a really good hand, like given this position and what's kind of happened, you just have to fold it. Like there's, who cares if you have aces? Like there's literally like a flush staring you in the face on the board. You have to fold them, and that's really tough to do. And that's kind of like the same as to what we're talking about, where it's like, you know, this move is bad, yet you're like,
Right.
oh, I'm gonna play it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's really helpful to. I mean, that's like one of the reasons that it's so helpful to have a teacher, because they'll point stuff out to you, and after a while, it's like they live in your head rent free, and they are like yelling at you in your head. I mean, I'll never forget this one. There's Raven, who is a very strong player, great teacher, like
Hmm.
6 dan, 5 dan, 6 dan.
His other
There,
name, it's Chris Sagner, right?
Chris Stagner, yeah, and
Yeah. So
he's done some videos for like Go Magic,
yep.
and
Shout
um,
out Go Magic.
he used to go by Frozen Soul way back in the day,
Ooh.
um, but he's a great teacher, and I just remember there's a couple of shapes where I played it, a few times, and he reviewed like 2 or 3 games, and he was just like, stop making this move, like, or he'll just be like, slap yourself for making this move, and I'm just like, okay, all right. Like once I got the voice in my head, it was like the next time I thought about that making that move, I was like, oh no, he's gonna yell at me. And I do think there's something to be said for that. Like I feel like that's almost like more of the like the Asian style of teaching Go, where it's just like you just a lot of really strong like Korean players, for example, will talk about how their teachers would not explain like why something was bad. They'd just be like, don't play it. Like, don't ask me why it's bad, just don't play it. And that has its problems, but there is something about like just getting that like instinct in your head that's just like, oh, this just feels bad to play.
Bow to your sensei. Bow to your sensei. Yeah, that you're not wrong. Like if a stronger player tells you not to do something, don't do it. I mean, it doesn't hurt to say like, can you explain why? But like for the most part, you should probably just listen to the stronger player. Um,
Yeah.
and it's funny you bring up like the like, oh, they're like some of your teachers that kind of just like live rent free in your head. Dude, that is the exact thing that happens with like Octo and Max, where like
Hmm.
O- Octo will, what'll happen is I'll make a move and then I'll hear in my head Octo's voice going, wrong. And I'm just like, fuck.
I can imagine
I'm
that.
like, I just gotta live with this mistake right now. And he's like, wrong direction. What are you doing there, bud? Wrong direction. I'm like, you're so right. And then with Max, it's like I'll have some like issue with some sort of fight, and like in my head, it'll be like, the issue isn't the fight. It's actually way earlier. There was an issue early on in the Joseki, or like the early game, that it causes you to now have this issue later on that you have to deal with. This problem manifested itself because of an earlier mistake you made, and I'm just like, you're so right, Max. You're so right. um,
Yeah.
the
No, it is very nice to have the voice in your head sometimes.
the last one, the most recent one that was very funny was like, I kept breaking bamboo joints,
Hmm.
because like I read at one point in my, these past 10 months, where I was like, it was like, breaking the bamboo joint is good because it breaks their shape, and so I'm like, yeah, I'm learning how to attack right now. I need to break the bamboo joint. And so like I like did that, showed it to Max one game, and he's like, okay, when you play that move, that means it's like saying I'm going to kill you. And he's like, in this position, you are not killing them. Like, so just don't do that. He's like, any other move is like better here than like breaking the bamboo joint. And then like another game comes by, and I'm like, break the bamboo joint. And like literally as I do it, I'm like, Max is not going to be happy with me. And same thing. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, your goal now is just to not break bamboo joints. And then so like finally third game came around, and I was like, I'm not breaking this bamboo joint. And then it was good. And then later on, I played a different move where Max is like, yeah, I'm not going to scold you for this, but this type of move is like breaking a bamboo joint. And I was like, I can't win. God damn it.
Yeah, and then wait, soon you're gonna find a game where they're like, well, what you should have done here is break the bamboo joint.
That's that. I think that's like the perfect evolution of that, though, for any type of
Oh, yeah,
topic, right? Where
totally.
it's like you're doing this bad thing, don't do it. You did it again, don't do it, and then you're like, I didn't do it, and all of a sudden they're like, you needed to do it here.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of like an elimination diet where, like, in an elimination diet, you're cutting out a bunch of stuff because you're like, I don't know, whatever. I'm getting indigestion. Like, what's going on? So you cut out like all these foods, and then you start like slowly adding them back in, and then you're like, oh, that was the thing that did it. And I had that with Peeps for a while, where I was like, every peep
Wait.
is wrong. Every
Oh,
peep.
oh, dude, I'm so sorry. When you
Oh, you
said
thought I was talking about like marshmallow peeps? I only eat marshmallow peeps now.
you're like, I had to eliminate them, but only the yellow ones.
No. No. Talking about the Go peep. The Go. Yeah, there was a period where it was like every time I would do a peep, some teacher would be like, "That was a bad peep," and I was just like, you know what? I'm just not gonna peep anymore. And then there was like I did that for a while, and it did actually help my game. And then I got to a point where it was like, okay, like there were enough times where I didn't peep at the right time that I sort of started like phasing it back in. But I do actually think that's kind of a good way to learn something is that you start with the extreme and kind of work your way to understanding the edge cases.
That's so funny you bring that thing up about peeps, because there's a game I was showing Max. We're not gonna say who this was, but I was showing it to Max and saying, I was like, let's count how many peeps have occurred in this game. And it's a correspondence game, so like we're on move like I think 100 or something like that. But like we counted and there's like 10 peeps. And let's just say they're not all good. I have a very strong group because there's so many peeps that I'm like, I have a stick to beat you over the head with. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean I guess like what I ultimately got to with peeps. I mean, of course I still make bad peeps all the time, but I just try to think like, am I getting more than my opponent? And sometimes that's asking that, and if I'm not sure, I just like won't do it.
Yeah.
But if it's very obvious that I'm like, okay, they're getting heavier and I'm getting like a useful stone.
That you can throw away at some point.
Yeah, right.
I think that's the other
Yeah,
part that people struggle with is like when they peep, they're like, I must hold on to this stone. It's like, no. That's free. That's just gonna live there. If you somehow save it in like a not forceful way, thumbs up. But otherwise you can like sacrifice it somehow.
Oh yeah, I thought of that as an anti-proverb, which is like save every like stranded stone. That was like one of my big issues back in the day.
The proverb is
I
just no child left behind.
Yeah. My baby in the middle of the board. I wanted to like do sort of like a quick broad strokes thing about like, okay, if you're in a rut, this is like what I think you should do. First of all, I think like to paint a picture of what I think the perfect mentality is when you're in a rut is to get into a mentality of like, it's fine. All I need to do is I just need to keep like taking my time, using the knowledge I have, slowing down, and it doesn't matter how many games I lose, I'm gonna eventually like figure this out. I've got all these resources, I've got, strong players to help me, and just like get into this very like humble, forward thinking, like, hey, sometimes you got to take a couple steps backwards to like, learn what you need to learn and go forward. And I think more specifically, you gotta like make sure you get out of whatever that like state is in your mind, because I think really with a rut you're usually tilted, kind of like in poker.
Mm-hmm.
It's a psychological thing. So sometimes you gotta trick yourself out of that mentality, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. But one of the ones that I mentioned was, yeah, give yourself a weird challenge. One that I heard was, your goal for the game is to have one group at the end. Uh, like to have, basically one giant connected group. And of course, you can do that, and you might lose, but you consider it a win because you know, achieved it. And that kind of tricks your brain into getting out of this weird state where it's just autopiloting and making the same types of mistakes over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, I think like the most important is to not care about winning and to not overestimate your opponent, and like give your opponent proper respect, and think like, hey, this person might be playing bad moves, but until I can exploit those bad moves and win the game, like I'm gonna consider them good moves. This person's like a good player, and I'm gonna respect their moves.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really nice way to kind of wrap it all up. Um, really quick note to our YouTube listeners. I don't know what happened in my brain, but Neal, your nameplate said you were 6Q. um,
Sometimes
and
depends on the
you're
day.
definitely not. I've corrected it. You are now 1Q. But
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I mean, no, that's great, because then next time someone plays me, they'll think I'm 6Q, and that'll be fun.
I just realized like 40 minutes in, and I was like, oh shit, this is not right. Um,
Well, in the spirit of not getting into ruts, maybe I am 6Q. Who cares, man? It's all about the
it's
the
all
way
just
you
a
play the
number.
stones. It's the flow of the stones, man.
6Q OGS, one Don in China. What's the difference? um, I I jokingly say that, but earlier this past week, actually, I don't know if you were around when I talked about this, Neal, but I was studying. What was I? I was studying a book at lunch, and I had my Go board out, and one of my coworkers comes up and he goes, "Oh, you play this game?" And I was like, "Go? Yeah. Do you play?" He goes, "Yeah, I played back in China." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." I was like, "Did you have a rank?" And he goes, "Yeah, I was." By the way, this side tangent here, but I think we've kind of wrapped up the rut stuff. But um, talking to someone who was like straight from China, like, and played Go there, to all of a sudden come to America and talk to someone in North America that plays Go, which is kind of dominated by like Japanese teachings. It was like a language barrier almost, where he was like, yeah, I was, like the ranks 1 to 9. Yeah, I was 1 amateur rank. And so in my head, I was like, oh, so you're 1 Dan. He goes, what's a Dan? And I was like, oh God. And I was like, oh, so like there's like 1 to 9 Dan, like amateur, 1 to 9 Dan professional. He goes, I yeah, okay, yeah, I was the one amateur one, the bottom one. I was like, okay. I was like, he's like, what are you? And I was like, oh, I'm 6Q. And he goes, well, what is that? And he's like 6 amateur. And I was like, no. Like, you know how there's like 1 to 30Q? And he goes, what are you talking about?
He's like, I just popped out of the womb as a 1 Dan. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, kind of. So like I didn't know how to explain it to him, because I was like, the rankings I think technically have different names in like Chinese. So I was trying to like Google search it, and I couldn't find anything. Like, I was like, it just kept saying like, oh yeah, Weiqi is playing in China, and they have nine Dons too. And I'm like, that's not what I'm looking at. Like, there's a different like name, and
Right,
I
yeah.
actually had to use GPT to help me. Because I was like, I explained the situation, and I'm like, what is it called in Chinese? And it was like, oh, in Chinese, it's like Duan, Duan, and I was like, okay, close enough. Whatever. And then Q, any listeners out there that are from China, please correct me if I'm incorrect or GPT is incorrect, but it was Jiwei, like Jiwei. And so I then messaged him and I was like, this is my rank. I'm 6 Jiwei. And then he goes, what's that? And I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? Like, he understood the Duan part. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm one Duan. But then he didn't understand Jiwei. And I was like, he's like, where did you find those rankings? And so I copy pasted what GPT said. And he goes, oh, okay, yeah. He was like, when I got my rank, I skipped all those Jiwei ranks. He's like, I was placed at one Dan amateur. And I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But at the same time, it's like funny to think like, whoa, I'm not. What are those lowly ranks? I'm up.
Okay, so Insung from like AYD, like
Yeah,
Yunseng
yeah.
Dojang. He runs a Go school, and okay, I could be misremembering this, but I want to say that in one of his lectures he was like talking about how he was a Q player for like 2 months, and then he was like a Don player, and then so because sometimes when you're playing games on in AYD, and Insung will like review your games, and sometimes he's just like, "What are you doing?" He like does not understand. He like cannot comprehend why you would play this certain move, and I'm like, I'm not sure that you've like ever had this like cue instinct that some of us have to like play a certain move, you know?
Yes.
And then when I learned that, I was like, oh, okay, now it like makes sense because sometimes he's been like so baffled by a move that I'm like, it's like the usual stuff. It's like they're misapplying a proverb, or they're, and he just like did not understand like how this move could make sense to anyone. 'Cause he was just born a Don,
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty much.
So where I was going with this was, so he says he's one done, and so I was like, oh, do you want to play a game? And so we scheduled, a lunch together where we could go
It's like, what's
play.
that?
Yeah. We call them fights to the death, and where I come from. um, you lose, you go to the shadow realm. But so we play a game. I come to find out he was like, I haven't played in like 7 years, so he definitely was rusty, and I could see that. But like, and I talked to like Octo and Max about it too, but like because of like the sheer number of people that play Go over there, like a one Don is probably closer to like maybe like what a 5Q 6Q might be here in the US, because it's like
Oh, gotcha.
the
Okay.
rankings are, there's just so many more people. And I think the same would happen here in the US, where it's like if all of a sudden we got like 100,000 more people to play Go and like all of a sudden get Go ranks, you might see some stuff like shift around because the nature of how many people there are. Um, but yeah, it was fun. So I beat him, but yeah, it
You're
he
officially
had some
Don now.
rest. Yeah, I'm officially
Don and the Don
I'm
podcast.
I'm a Don in China. But yeah, it was just
Yeah,
funny.
I'll always give people your Fox rating, when they ask.
Well, that requires me to have a Fox account, so.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting over here at 3 Don. No big deal.
But it was also funny because I noticed he was like holding the stones like wrong, and by that I mean it wasn't between like
Hmm.
your index and your middle finger. He was like holding it
Uh-huh.
like this and like placing them down, and he seemed kind of like awkward with the stones. And then Octo says to me, he's like, are your stones biconvex? And I was like, yeah. He goes, they don't have that. It's flat on one side. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, he's probably like, what the hell are these stones? Why didn't you cut them in half? um, the other thing that was really funny was he, like, so as we had this whole conversation and he didn't know what like dawn or like Q ranks were, I was like, oh, he's not gonna know any Japanese terminology. Like he's not gonna know what Joseki is. He's not gonna know what a Hane is. So like, as we were going through the game, we wanted to like. He was like, "Can we talk about the game while we play?" I was like, "Oh yeah, that's fine." But I was like, I can't use any of these words because he's not. He's gonna be like, "Huh?" And before the game started, I was like, "Oh, he sure as shit doesn't know Japanese counting." So then I was like,
Oh, right, because yeah, the Chinese counting is like sometimes the board gets completely messed up,
so I was like,
but it's all part of the deal.
how do you do scoring? And he goes, so normally if you get 185, and I was like, okay. I'm like, so you use Chinese counting as opposed to Japanese counting. He's like, what's Japanese counting? So, so I had to explain what it was, and so I make a square, and I was like, yeah, so this is like 9 points, and he gives me a really confused look, and he goes, well, that doesn't seem right because the stones are also counting as points too. And I was like, in Chinese scoring, yes, but not in Japanese scoring. He goes, well, that doesn't seem right because if you had a stone in the center, then that means you have one less point. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, and I was like, we'll do Chinese scoring. It's fine because I like recorded the games. Like eventually, I could just use the app
Yeah.
to like count it for us. But it was just funny. He's just like, what is this strange world? Like, do you guys even know how Go works?
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking about how at some point I want to come on and we should do a rules, like a rules episode because okay, that might sound really really boring, but it's actually like pretty fascinating to like know all the differences between the rules and like what the edge cases are, and it's honestly kind of helpful if you're playing on different servers. Like if you're playing on a Chinese server, then you should fill all your dame points, for example. And
Mm-hmm.
the way that bent four in the corner works is different. When it comes to Chinese rules versus Japanese, and
I did not know that actually.
yeah. So I won't like go too deep into it because we got to save that for the episode.
Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, there's a lot of differences, and there's I actually really I like a lot of things about Chinese rules, which is one of the reasons like AGA rules tries to kind of like marry the Chinese and Japanese rules. Um, but yeah, it's actually a pretty fascinating subject, so we'll
Mm-hmm.
have to go into that in a future episode.
Yeah, actually, one of the things I'm like very curious about, and I haven't really done any research on, but I want to know the history of Komi. I think that is a
Oh
long
yeah.
and interesting history because it
Hmm.
it used to be 5.5 in Japanese, and at some point they're like, no, it's 6.5, and so I'm like, when did that occur? Why did it occur?
I think it was
Um,
even like lower than that in the past, and
y- y-
like
yeah,
if you go really really far back, they started the game with a Blackstone in the 4/4, and then the opposite 4/4, and then
y-
a white stone in the 4/4 and the opposite 4/4. And
yes,
I think there was no Komi back in those days. And there was like, I
correct.
think there was also like a group tax at one point where if you had too many groups, you were like penalized for having like too
Oh
many groups.
yeah, yeah, I've heard about
There's
that.
all kinds of stuff. We can go into all of that when we get into
You're
the
like writing
rules.
down notes. You're like, ooh, we can talk about this. Ooh, we can talk about that.
This is where like my like nerdiness comes out, or I don't know, I think I used to be a programmer, and actually like I was thinking earlier when you were talking about like speaking out loud while you're playing,
Mm-hmm.
there's literally a term in programming called it's like rubber duck technique or rubber duck programming or something, and it's where you have
That
a
sounds
rubber
so
duck.
made up.
It's totally real. Go look it up. You have a rubber duck like sitting on your desk, and you're like working through some problem. You're like talking to the rubber duck, and you're like, okay, so when the variable goes in here, it should be this, and okay, it has this value, and then now it's going to go to this, and it should be like this, and then at some point you'll be like, and now it's not going where it should, and then you suddenly realize where the problem is. So it's like totally the same concept.
If okay, here's what I'm gonna do, Neil. Now that you brought that up, the first in-person tournament that I go to for Go, I will bring a rubber duck, and then like just in the middle of the game, just kind of like one moment, and just like take it and be like, so what they're doing in this position is this. But I think that's a mistake because the position is calling for this type of move, and
Then you should like at some point you should hold it up to your ear and be like, "Yeah, he can hear you. Don't say
Dude, my opponents just think I'm a psycho. They're like, it's move 5.
But like maybe they'll psych him out. They'll be like, he's already read to the end.
Dude, there's like God, I didn't know his name, but I could distinguish him every year at nationals for chess, because he always brought this stupid little chocolate pig, and he sat it on a cotton ball next to him during his games. And this was like, nationals was a 3-day event, so for 3 days he just had this chocolate pig on a cotton ball, and I'm just like, it's a chocolate pig guy again. There he is. Hasn't.
So that stuff though, it's like you've seen Hikaru no Go, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
So you got to have your little rituals, like when he grabs a win. It's like the chocolate pig, you
Yeah.
gotta have your little ritual.
Yeah, everyone's got their thing, but
When you said that that guy was like holding the stones the wrong way, I immediately thought like, it's his first game. He doesn't even hold the stones right. That's not the best move. That's not even a good move. He's far above me, testing me.
and then and then all of a sudden you just hear like the
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I'm glad you had the sound clip on hand.
Yeah, I actually, I'm not sure if our stream picked it up. So I'll explain it really quick in case it didn't, but it's the noise from Hikaru no Go when like games are extremely tense and you're like, oh, like it's that like little like ding, ding,
Yeah,
ding.
right.
So
Like when the person plays the really aggressive move, and they're suddenly like,
or it's like a very calm move, and they're like, oh my god, now it's all clear to me that I'm screwed.
okay, I gotta say one more. I realized I forgot to include this in my bio in my introduction in our last
No,
episode.
can't change it. Go ahead.
Okay, I have to share my one Go claim to fame because I'm very proud of this. But there's an article on Sensei's library called "The Nuclear Tsuji." And I was the original author of the article that became the Nuclear Tsuji. And I did this like when I was in middle school. I wrote this like article on there as like a joke. And then I came back like 8 years later and I was like, what? There's like a cultural phenomenon around this now. And like then I was like seeing people talk about the Nuclear Tsuji all the time. So anyways, I may never become, higher than 1 Dan, but at least I did that.
All right, because you brought it up. Well, this is how we'll wrap up this show. I have to read it unless you want to read it because you're the author.
I'll read it because
right.
I feel like I'll read it in the way that it was meant to be read.
Oh my god, yes, it's like the author reading their own book.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so the original name for it was throwing the board against the wall, denting the wall and the board prior to uppercutting your opponent, and it was under the bad habits section. Here we go. Oftentimes at my Go club, enraged old men will take the Go-Bon and hurl it against the wall. This not only causes loud noises and distractions, but also many injuries due to the flying stones. The old man then uppercuts his opponent and storms out of the room. If the man is seriously injured, he must wait until a member of the club is not playing a game before he can receive help. This is one of the worst habits, in my opinion. Main reasons: death or serious injury may be caused to your opponent. It rushes all other games because the players are hurrying to finish in order to give the injured opponent proper medical treatment. Fewer boards to play with in the club. Less appealing club location due to dent in wall.
Dude, the part where it says it rushes all other games because players are hurrying to finish in order to give the injured opponent proper medical treatment is like the cherry on. It's not because you hurt someone. It's because you're rushing everyone to finish. Oh my god, it's so good.
It's sort of a politeness thing, you know. You can't just go do CPR when there's a game going on. That's rude to your opponent, as we all know.
This, God, when I learned you wrote this, one, I didn't know what it was, but to find out that I was like, oh my God, I know someone that was the originator of a meme. I felt like I met Gandhi for a moment.
I honestly, I don't think I could have ever come up with this as an adult. I'm pretty sure I was like 13 when I wrote this.
It's so good. Dude, 13-year-old you, just perfect.
Props to 13-year-old me. I feel like he was like really on another level.
So yeah, that's the episode, everyone. Thanks, Neal, for being here while Octo is gone.
Thanks for having me, Octo. Heal up and get back over here, man. Get on the podcast.
Yeah, great topic. And for those of you who are listening, if you have other strategies for how you get out of a rut, why don't you leave it in the comment section or wherever else you are listening to this. We'd love to hear. So that has been Down in the Queue, and we'll see you next time. Oh wait, sorry, I just baited everyone into thinking the episode is over. Next episode number 5, is a very special episode that I don't think anyone should miss, because it is a topic that has never ever been covered by anyone that I can know of in English.
And definitely not like this.
Yeah.
If it's been covered somewhere, it's never been covered like this.
Yes. It's very special, so please tune in for the next one. It's going to be five-tastic. Five-tastic is what I can say.
It's going to be a thick episode.
You're damn right, Neal. All right. Thank you. We'll see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.